Remote work was supposed to free us, but what if it's quietly rewriting the entire rental market from the inside out? And most landlords haven't even noticed yet. We're talking about a shift so fundamental that cities built on commuter culture are watching their vacancy rates spike, while sleepy mountain towns can't keep a one-bedroom on the market for longer than 48 hours. Let's back up and talk about the catalyst, because this didn't happen overnight. It started with a global health crisis that forced roughly 60% of knowledge workers into their living rooms with a laptop and a prayer. What began as a temporary inconvenience became, for tens of millions of people, a permanent renegotiation of the relationship between where you work and where you live. Think of it like a rubber band that got stretched so far during the pandemic that it simply snapped. It's not going back to its original shape, no matter how many CEOs send strongly worded return to office memos. The commute, once the invisible tax every renter paid just to stay close to their employer, suddenly became optional. And that changed everything about what renters were willing to tolerate and where they were willing to sign a lease. There was a moment somewhere around 2021 when headlines were breathlessly celebrating the urban exodus, and remote work felt like the forever future, and venture capitalists were literally buying land in Wyoming. Then the narrative got complicated. Tech layoffs hit, hybrid schedules crept back in, and suddenly the story wasn't so clean anymore, leaving both landlords and renters caught in an uncomfortable limbo. The psychological toll of that whiplash is real renters who made bold moves to cheaper markets are now nervously watching their employers inch toward mandatory office days, while landlords in secondary cities who bet big on the migration wave are wondering if the music has stopped. Economists like Nick Bunker at Indeed have pointed out that the labor market is still repricing what location independence actually means, and that uncertainty is baked into every lease renewal conversation happening right now. Here's the historical truth though. We've seen demand disruptions before the suburbanization of the 1950s, the urban renaissance of the 90s, the short-term rental boom of the 2010s, and each time the rental market eventually recalibrated, just not evenly and not painlessly. What makes this cycle feel different is the technology isn't going anywhere. Zoom and Slack aren't going to uninvent themselves, which means the underlying pressure on traditional rental geography is structural, not cyclical. Remote work fits into a longer arc of decentralization that has been quietly building since broadband became widely accessible. The pandemic didn't create the trend, it just hit fast forward. Community forums on Reddit and housing analysts alike have been predicting for years that gateway cities would eventually price themselves into irrelevance, and now we're watching that hypothesis get tested in real time with real money on the line. Here's a misconception worth killing right now. Remote work does not mean rental demand disappears. It means it relocates, and that's a completely different animal. Renters who no longer need to live in San Francisco don't stop being renters. They just become renters in Boise or Chattanooga or Asheville, which means the pie isn't shrinking, it's just getting sliced differently across the map. The practical lesson from every previous demand migration is that the landlords who win are the ones who identified the directional shift early and positioned before the crowd arrived, not the ones who chased headlines after prices already spiked. If you're an investor, the move isn't panic. It's targeted research into mid-tier metros with strong job diversification, good internet infrastructure, and a quality of life that remote workers actually want to pay for. Discipline here means not over-leveraging into a single market just because a podcast told you it was the next Austin size. Your positions modestly, stay liquid, and let the data lead rather than the hype. The investors who got burned chasing short-term rental gold in Gatlinburg and Scottsdale didn't lose because the trend was fake. They lost because they had no exit strategy and too much concentration. There's something almost poetic and absurd about the fact that the office-building humanity's monument to organized productivity is now the distressed asset, while a two-bedroom ranch house in Knoxville with fiber internet is the new trophy property. The market has a dark sense of humor, and right now it's laughing at every urban core that assumed density was destiny. What this all comes down to philosophically is that the rental market doesn't reward being right. It rewards being right and being sized correctly, and being patient enough to let the thesis play out without flinching. Conviction without discipline is just gambling with better vocabulary. If remote work becomes truly permanent, and the evidence suggests it's at least permanently partial, then rental demand doesn't collapse, it disperses. And dispersed demand creates both winners and losers depending entirely on where you're positioned when the music settles. You can be comfortable with that uncertainty if your strategy is built on process rather than prediction, because a sound framework survives being wrong about timing even when it's right about direction. The beautiful irony is that remote work, sold to us as freedom from geography, has actually made geography more important than ever. Just different geography than we used to care about. Where you own, what you own, and who your target renter is has never mattered more than it does in this particular moment of permanent reinvention. Whether you're looking to get into rental property investing, need a trusted contractor to upgrade your current units, or want to connect with the right lender to make your next move, check out our links in the description below and let's get you started.